I thought that my behavior prior to that point basically caused the early menopause. And I felt, right, now I need to sort it out. Now I need to make sure that it's no longer this, I'm trying to lose weight, I want to be skinny, I need to be healthy. And that's where my focus shifted to.
Welcome back to the High Daily Rhythm podcast. Today with me I have Jasmin Dhillon. She's a certified health coach and the host of the Forties Formula Podcast, which is an incredible podcast. She has a background in corporate events, finance, and project management, and she brings a strategic and results-driven approach to women's health and wellness. And her own experience with early menopause sparked a deep passion for understanding the connection between nutrition, hormones, and overall well-being. Today, she helps women take control of their health through evidence-based nutrition, sustainable lifestyle, and gut health testing for personalized nutrition solutions. Through her coaching and podcast, Jasmine translates complex health topics into practical, actionable steps, empowering women to feel strong, energized, and in control of their bodies. And today, we are delving into perimenopause and menopause, which we've not spoken about yet. And so what I guess we'd really love to dive into is how there, and I know this is the question that always comes up in society, is there's such this enormous focus on reproductive health, fertility, and pregnancy, but far less on these midlife transitions. And so, there's a lot of data gaps too. I know that you're witnessing, Jasmine, in research in women's health has long been prioritized on those childbearing years over post-reproductive life. So I'm so excited to get into this topic with you, and I know everybody is, so welcome.
Thank you for having me and thank you for that wonderful introduction. I'm really excited to be here.
You have such a wealth of knowledge. Now, I know you've probably shared how you got into this work because it's really formulated your work and your lifestyle and everything like that. So I wonder if we really could start at the basics in the beginning of how your health journey has shaped your work now.
So it's quite interesting because I have suffered from different types of hormonal issues for a very, very long time. But it wasn't until I hit perimenopause, which was around age 37, that things started to really shift and I started taking more of a focus into women's health and what I do for myself. I had just given birth to twins and I wasn't sleeping very well and I felt rubbish. I didn't feel right. There was something going on. I wasn't quite sure. I just assumed it was postpartum stuff. And I had twins, so that's like a big deal when it comes to sort of energy levels, and everything just felt a bit low and down for me. And then I remember one day I was watching TV and I felt this hot sort of wave come over me. And I turned to my husband and I said to him as a joke, I think I'm going through menopause. And then it was like this aha moment. And I thought, oh, geez, actually, maybe I should go get that checked out. And luckily, I'm here in Singapore, so it's very easy to get doctor's appointments. It's very easy to go get tested. And they did run some blood tests. And at that point, they basically told me that my progesterone levels were super low and I was basically into the throes of perimenopause. And then when I sort of take a step back and I'm like, oh, well, that explains why my periods were so messed up for a very long time. That explains why I really struggled to get pregnant with my first child. And there was just, loads of things that kind of fell into place. And it really made me feel like, oh my God, what's happening? How do I deal with this? And what do I do next?
And so I know for you stating like 37 years old, so you're going through postpartum and perimenopause and early onset menopause, because we're hearing a lot in the news media of, from age 35, I'm going into perimenopause. And I've noticed it's created this like extra heightened stress and hysteria. But for you, it was certainly real too. So what were the signs and symptoms, or if you're going back into your health history, when did that start for you, or what are the signs and symptoms that we could notice?
So it's very different for everybody. Everyone will have different kinds of symptoms. The research out there suggests that there's at least 70 types, and that's known symptoms that you can face when it comes to perimenopause. So for me, the hot flushes were the kicker, which really made me think about it because I feel like that's what everyone knows. And it's quite obvious if you have a hot flush, it's probably perimenopause. But then there are people who don't have that. You can have
Mm.
things like UTIs, which I suffered from, anxiety, which a lot of people suffer from, wrist pains, joint pains. That's also quite common as well. People get frozen shoulders, dry eyes, dry mouth, vaginal dryness. There's just so much stuff that might seem
Mm.
unrelated, but is actually a signal that your hormone levels are not quite where they were. Basically, where they were when you were sort of premenopausal.
I know tracking for this is to ask when your mother went through menopause. Was it the same for your genetics as well?
So, my mother went through, I'm pretty sure it's a bit weird because people don't talk about my mother basically didn't speak about it. I think she joked about hot flashes a couple of times. But what she went through
Mm.
was she had severe bleeding and they told her that was
Mhm.
linked to fibroids. And I remember that because she was about 45 years old. There's only 20 years between us. So, I was 25. So I was very aware that, she was going through something at the time. But because she had such heavy bleeding, they decided to put her into medical menopause. So we don't know when she would have naturally have gone through it, but she was getting
Mhm.
symptoms around sort of, the ages of 45. From what I'm aware, I don't know if she'd had anything prior to that, but obviously that's still 10 years after when I was getting them.
And so how did that change your life? Obviously, hang on, you're going also maybe through postpartum. You've just had twins and you're going through menopause. Wow.
Yeah, that was a
Yeah,
lot.
that's a lot.
So, how did it change my life? Okay, so after the initial crying and feeling like I've lost a part of myself, which, I think it's very normal to kind of feel like, you are no longer the you that you used to be, and it's okay. I basically had this mindset shift where I thought, right, I have these three gorgeous babies because my eldest was only 2 years old at the time, so still a baby for me. And I need to make sure that I'm there and I'm strong enough and I'm going to be around. And that put me in a place where I really sort of focused on, right, I want to be strong, I want to be healthy, and I want to be there for my kids. It's going to sound really morbid, but I had this sort of, I guess, this feeling that I'd fast forwarded my life by 10 years. And I actually felt that I had done it to myself because I probably wasn't the healthiest beforehand. I did a lot of sort of yo yo dieting. I was always on a diet or off a diet and doing things which sort of just looked at, how can I lose weight? And I thought that my behavior prior to that point basically caused the early menopause. And I felt, right, now I need to sort it out. Now I need to make sure that it's no longer this, I'm trying to lose weight, I want to be skinny, I need to be healthy. And that's where my focus shifted to.
You mentioned a couple of things there. I guess the first one is that preparation. So what can women do to prepare? And I suppose prevent isn't the right word because we I think as if the world of anti-aging and the world of like youthfulness and the way of this skinny, like holding on to something that is like stopping us evolve as wisdom and appreciate our wisdom years. And that's something that is so special to the female experience, but you have to be so grounded and own who you are to honor that. So I guess how can we protect our bodies to have a smooth transition and prepare for that experience so we're not grieving the process, I suppose,
I
is maybe.
think first is awareness. I think basically
Mm.
understanding that this is going to happen at some point in your life. It might be when you're in your 30s, it might
Mm.
be when you're in your 40s, or even in your 50s. Just sort of being aware that this is a process that you will go through. And I think then coming to terms with
Mhm.
that would really help. I think when I went through it in the 30s, I felt like, oh, no one's spoken about this. I wasn't expecting this at this point, and I wish I had some
Mm.
awareness around it, but nobody was talking about it at the time. But now there seems to be this wealth of knowledge. Lots of people are coming out, lots of people are talking about it. But then on the flip side, research is also showing that if you don't look after your body, if you don't give it what it needs in terms of nutrients and movement and rest and recovery, then your menopausal symptoms are going to be a lot harsher than if you were giving it the right inputs that it needed. So when it comes to preventative measures, now this is not to say that you're not going to have any symptoms whatsoever, but you'll be in a better position. They shouldn't be so difficult that you can't manage them. But making sure that you get the right nutrition in. So focusing on protein, focusing on fiber, getting in probiotics, making sure that you're well hydrated. Those are sort of key when it comes to nutrition. Focusing on stress reduction and sleep. I'm a big proponent of making sure that you sleep well, and that will also help. Unfortunately, when you do, not everybody, but some people, when they go through
Mm,
perimenopause, their sleep is severely affected. So if you find that you normally sleep well and then all of a sudden you're not sleeping well, that could be a sign that, your body is changing, your progesterone levels are dropping. Making sure that you do get daily
mm.
movement in, you're building up muscle mass, so you're doing some strength training, some resistance forms of training, just so that you have better muscle mass, and as you enter your later years, you're not going to be going in this place where you might suffer from sarcopenia, and if you fall, then that's an issue, or have osteoporosis, osteopenia later on in life.
Mm. So I suppose the key factors is like holistic approach that we're
Yes.
starting to see in the literature and not stressing about it, keeping your heart rate variability, your parasympathetic nervous system down. So how are you managing family? I think a big question that I see is like, I don't know how I can have a young family going through this menopause, and it creates more stress, and then it creates relationship stress, and you're the pinnacle of the family. This is certainly a fear that I notice because maybe we are having families later as well
Yeah.
too. So how do you advise women or notice the conversation around these queries?
So it is tough, and we are at that point in our life where we're considered the sandwich generation. We're worried about our parents, our aging parents, we're worried about our young kids.
Mm,
Then, on top of that, you might be in a good place in your career. So, you've got a lot of work pressure going on. And there is this kind of, I feel like it's probably the most stressful time of your life. And I think what
mm,
happens is during this point, you need to put some boundaries into place. You need to have discussions with your family members, with your partner, with your kids if they're old enough, and try to do things for you when you can do them. Whether that means going out for a walk and listening to a podcast, or listening to some music, getting out to the gym, reading a book, having some breathwork, meditation, whatever works for you, whatever brings you joy. Maybe avoid things like, having a glass of wine at night, because that can probably not put you into the best situation when it comes to sort of managing stress. It might feel like an immediate stress relief, but actually later on, that's going to affect your parasympathetic nervous system, it's going to affect your sleep, and then you'll end up spiraling. And also, when you go through perimenopause, your body can't actually metabolize the alcohol in the same way as well. So looking after yourself, making sure that you're giving it the right stimulus so that you can carve out time for yourself where possible. I know sometimes that's not always possible. I'm very lucky I'm in Singapore, so I do have the support system here, which allows me to have some time for myself. But if that means you have a discussion with your partner and you say, right, why don't we do alternate Sundays where I sleep in on one Sunday, you sleep in the next, that way you
mm.
can actually manage to carve out that time. But then that involves communicating with your partner how you're feeling and how to move forward so that you can both have some time for yourself, because it is a stressful period and it's hard, but without that sort of communication piece and without actually putting boundaries in place, you're not going to get the relief that you need.
Mm. So would you say that is maybe one of the underrated health self-care things that you could do is forming your relationships and communicating? I think our parents' age, as you said, you didn't even know that your mother was going through it. I think a lot of women, we can vouch for this too. So I think it's so wonderful that it's in news media, it's starting to enter workforces, and our partners are really on board, aren't they?
I had a client the other day who mentioned to me that she's going through perimenopause now, and her husband is basically telling her to just get on with it because his mother didn't say anything. And I think this is the
Mm.
issue: is if you don't bring that conversation to your partner, they're not going to know, and then you're going to end up suffering in silence, and that will affect not just your relationship but also your mental well-being as well.
Because I think what we're noticing with women in modern society, it's that invisibility, isn't it? When we keep ourselves invisible, we keep ourselves hidden. And that's not what we're supposed to do. It's this obsession with youthfulness.
Yes.
But I'm starting to see how women that look are so graceful, and they are the wisdom keepers in all different traditions.
Here in Singapore, people are talking
Mhm.
about it more. The general trend has been that it wasn't spoken about before. And I feel like that's probably the same across the globe. It's not something that people did speak about.
I know Singapore actually is a big hub for femtech, and there's a lot of research and a lot of studies going on. What are you noticing, because you're from England, what are you maybe noticing between maybe your friends and clients in Singapore versus, I know you don't live in England, but at least friendship groups that are going through similar periods?
So what I've noticed here is I think for people here, especially if they've got sort of health insurance or the means to manage their health in a way, they're able to get appointments with doctors. They are being heard and they are being put on the support, given the support they need, whether that's through HRT or sort of speaking to the right people. And what I've heard from friends back at home in England is, like they're struggling to be heard. They are going and they're trying to speak to doctors and they're being told, oh, maybe you need an SSRI or you need to do something else. They want someone to listen to their symptoms, but they don't seem to be connecting the dots in the right way. Now, I don't know if that's because that's an NHS issue, if that's just a lack of education issue, but things are changing and people are getting somewhere, but just not as quickly as I think they should be.
Hmm. And I guess what would be since based on your experience being in your 40s and engulfed in this world of perimenopause and menopause, what would be your dream scenario as what women experienced once they had their symptoms and then the support that they had needed?
I think being able to go to a physician or a doctor and listening to how you're feeling, being validated that it's not in your head, that these are real symptoms because they're real to you, and basically getting the support that you need and giving women the opportunity to go on to HRT if that's what they want to do, and even making sure that they get the lifestyle aspect looked at as well, because I feel like HRT isn't the be all and end all. I think it's really important to address the lifestyle side of everything as well. You can go on hormone replacement, but it's not going to make you're not going to end up losing the weight that you've gained if you don't look into what you're eating and how you're exercising and what your sleep is like. So I think, focusing on lifestyle is also part of the puzzle as well.
So if somebody came to you, or say, for example, right now I'm 37 years old and I was getting, just some different changes, like maybe some UTIs, which I actually did have my first UTI recently. The doctor was like, this is normal. You're going to experience this like at least a couple of times a year. And I was like, what? Because of your age. So if someone like me is getting like tense muscles and like UTIs, I'm aware that, okay, I could be going into perimenopausal time. And I know there's a lot of people in this age group experiencing that. So what would be some steps or some tests that we could look at?
So the thing with testing is perimenopause is a time when your hormones are like fluctuating like crazy. 1 month they might be non-existent and another month they might be sky high. So actually taking a test is just a snapshot in time and it doesn't really tell you much. But what you should do is track your cycles, track your symptoms, track your feelings, and then go to your doctor and speak about it. And if you see there's a trend happening or no trend, because obviously things are going to be crazy at that time, sometimes you're going to feel completely normal, other times you might just feel like the earth is like opening up and being swallowed up alive. But I think understanding that it's not anything that doesn't feel normal to you the way you are, they could mean something. And then if you want to go on to HRT, having that conversation with your doctor is an important step, and seeing if it's right for you and whether your doctor feels comfortable giving it to you. Research does show that actually if you get into it at the right time, sort of at the start of your perimenopausal symptoms, it will help your transition much better than if you get into it later on or even post-menopause.
Yeah, I think that's a big one, because I notice like a lot of us are not inside of our bodies, are we? Because, the daily stresses, people are pulling us left, right, and center. And you might have these symptoms that are huge, but it's the subtle symptoms, isn't it? It's the real cues and real changes. And as you say, those mood changes or slight mucus changes or temperature changes that we're really not in our body, are we? So I think that's
Yeah.
a
I think basically the tracking will really help you understand. So if for example, you've normally had a very regular cycle, it's every 28 days, and then all of a sudden you've noticed, oh, now it's every 24 days, or it's, every 25 days, or it's gone to every 30 days. That's a change in your cycle, which indicates there's a change in your hormones. Whether it's perimenopause or not, it could indicate a change in your hormone levels.
And tracking, it can be as simple as, one of the mobile tracking apps
Yeah.
or, whatever you feel comfortable
Whatever, you can just
using.
write it down in a diary, however you find it, in a way that it's easy for you. Basically, if you can
Mm.
sort of just note down on a calendar, oh, when you started your period, and then you can go back and track. But actually having a mobile app is just so much easier, because it will calculate the day for you, and it will tell you when your next period is due, and you can put your symptoms in, and all of that stuff will definitely help.
And I guess, yeah, what is your biggest message for women right now? What do you want women to know? I mean, I know we've spoken about a lot with self-care and things like that, but I guess information that you didn't have at the time.
I think looking after yourself and putting yourself first is such a big thing. We always spend a lot of time looking after everyone else, our kids, our husband, our parents, but we forget to bring it back and look after ourselves. So then when you chuck perimenopause into it, you're just at the point of burnout, and you don't know what's happening, and you don't feel like yourself, and things just feel completely off, and no one understands you. And you know what? That's okay. But if you can bring it back, and you can look after yourself, and you give yourself the time to switch off, you give yourself the right nutrition, you
Mm.
give yourself the right stimulus when it comes to training and exercise, hopefully that will help you ease into that transition a lot easier than just feeling like rubbish.
Mm-mm-mm. It's a transition through our lives, isn't it? And I guess like a big one too is women that haven't, who are kind of like gym phobic, or they've always been had like, it's call them the skinny fat.
Oh,
They've
yeah.
always been so lucky. They've had those genes that are like, okay, they can eat anything. And their parents were able to, and their mother was always skinny. But I think our generation is changing a lot because we have access to xenoestrogens and all of these things. So they're in shock when they can't shift weight and have
Yeah.
never been physically. What is your guidance for a woman that has, lost their identity in their body?
So when it comes to never having trained before, in a way you're in a really good situation, because for people who haven't trained before, when you do start training, your body is going to really respond to that training stimulus. And what you want to do is you want to focus on making sure that you are getting some kind of resistance training in. You don't have to hit the gym. If you're at home, you can do some body weight stuff, you can do some squats at home, you can try and do some push-ups. Anything where you're using sort of big muscle groups will be beneficial. Even just picking up your kids, that is a weight training stimulus, but being able to do it regularly is important. And then the other things you want to do is have some impact forms of exercises, whether it's jumping, get a skipping rope and do some jumping, because that will help with your bone density. So all of these things, it's not about, looking good in a bikini, but the problem is when you lack muscle mass, that is also a driver for insulin resistance, pre-diabetes, and then diabetes. And there's people that are skinny fat tend to be the ones that end up having those issues, because their body is not it's not storing is extra fat. So what's going to happen with all that extra sort of food that they're eating, in terms of all that glucose that's going into their system? You need to have the muscle to be able to hold on to all the glucose from the foods that you eat, unless obviously you're eating minimally processed foods which come from protein and fibers. What I found is that it's the people who are skinny, who've never trained before, are actually the ones who are ending up with metabolic issues as well, not just the people who have suffered with weight changes or are obese.
Mm. Yeah, that's a big one, isn't it? The metabolic issues. And then that
Mm.
drives your symptoms for a lot
Yeah.
longer. Because I know there is this fear, this hesitation to go into menopause because the symptoms are going to last 10 years, 15
Yeah.
years. So I guess, yeah, what would be your guidance on just to have that? I know we've spoken about this a lot, but that really clean transition so the hot flashes don't have to go on long, the anxiety doesn't have to go on for so long.
When it comes down to it, it is just lifestyle. You need to just manage your lifestyle. So, stress reduction, avoiding toxic substances, smoking, alcohol, those types of things is definitely not going to help you. Making sure you hit your nutrition on there, get your protein in, get your vegetables in, Get the fiber in, probiotics, all of that stuff. That's all going to be amazing for you. Have minimally processed foods. Try not to eat
Mm.
things like ultra processed, hyper palatable foods, crisps, chocolates, biscuits. Have them when you want them, but don't make that sort of the majority of your diet. Try to get your food from minimally processed food. Try to focus on sleep. And those are the things that will really help you ease into that transition. And then, where possible, and if you feel comfortable, once you've spoken to your doctor, then HRT can also help as well.
hmm Do you notice any other abnormal symptoms? Is there an increase in gut issues, for example, if there has been maybe some underlying conditions, I suppose? But would there be any other symptoms that women can adapt their diet to?
Yeah, so what you find is that women do tend to get more inflamed guts during this time. If you think about it, if you've been eating a certain way for the last 40 years, let's say 35, or and your body has been taking a battering, it's going to be trying to get through all of that stuff, all that sort of toxic load is building up. And then what happens is if you're not giving it the right input, some women will find that they end up getting autoimmune conditions as they enter their 40s. So I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's when I was 23, but women in their 40s are now getting diagnosed with Hashimoto's, Graves' disease. There's so many other autoimmune conditions coming up, and the problem is when you are suffering from something like leaky gut, and then you're going through a stressful period in your life, which tends to happen when you are in your 40s, and your diet and your lifestyle isn't on point. That's basically the recipe for an autoimmune condition. Oh, but then
Because, yeah.
there has to be a genetic predisposition to it. So it doesn't mean that if you do all three of those things, you're 100% going to get it. It's if you also have genetic predisposition as well. So, you might be a lucky person. You might be able to get through all of it without any issues. But for a lot of people, that seems to be the case.
So these habits that women are doing in their 20s while they're working in ad agencies, PR, crazy fashion, da 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 da. Like, at 10 years later, everything that you do impacts you. Because I think, we talk so much about nutrition, we talk so much about these lifestyle practices, but I don't think they're taken in as seriously as they are. And you can vouch for.
Oh yeah, 100%. When you're younger, you think nothing's going to happen to you. It's fine. I'll just go on a diet and I'll be okay. I don't have to worry about it now. And I've seen it not with myself, but with my clients, with my family members. They don't think about this stuff until either they have an issue which forces them to think about it and they have to start taking it seriously, or they have children and now they're thinking, right, I've got this human being that I'm looking after and I want them to have a good role model and I want to be there for them, and that's when they start to make changes as well.
Yeah, I think that holistic approach that has to be taken so seriously, and it's so helpful that we're having these conversations, you're leading these conversations, people, and I think it's that, the crisis really leads the path, doesn't it? So through your experiences now you can lead and share everybody. And I think if we do have some type of crisis as well, it's just an opening for us to go into something that we've been avoiding.
Yeah, for sure. And communication, like talking to your partner, talking to a friend, talking to a doctor, just being open about how you're feeling. I think those are really important conversations that need to be had.
I think it's so underrated that maybe that grief or that emotional or identity shift that you have. You're still, beautiful. I know in sense it's a little bit tricky when your identity has been attached to your outward appearance and the way you live your life. And that it's a reinvention of yourself. So I think that's so important too. Is there any last messages or anything that we've missed that you'd love to share with our audience?
I think for me, I just really want to reiterate that being open and communicating with those around you is really, really important. And bringing it back to yourself, looking after yourself by giving yourself time, giving yourself boundaries, giving yourself the right nutrition, and having the motivation to just go and do something for yourself is really, really important. So that's my biggest message to everyone who will at some stage go through perimenopause. Just make sure that you have some time for yourself, love yourself, and be open to making sure that you give yourself the time and the love that it needs.
It's not a selfish act, it's a requirement, isn't
Yes,
it?
definitely.
Yeah. And so, where can everybody find you, Jasmine? I know you have an incredible, it's such a wonderful podcast, the
Thank
Forties
you.
Formula. How did you start that? I love that, actually. It's
Wow.
such a wonderful.
So it was myself and a friend. We just really sort of loved the conversations we were having. So we thought, let's
Mm.
put it out there. Let's find out some more information for ourselves. So it was like a learning curve for us by speaking to other people and also help share that knowledge with other women. So, yes, the Forties Formula is available on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and all the major podcast channels. I also have my own Instagram, which is eat.with.jasmine. There's no E at the end of my name. I used to share a lot of recipes on there. It's been on the back burner for a while, but I hope to pick that up soon. So you can also reach me on LinkedIn or via my website, which is also Eat with Jasmine. No E.
Yeah, it's a wealth of information. It's
Thank you.
so important, and this information needs to get out to everybody. So, thank you so much, Jasmine.
Thank you. Thank you for this time. I really appreciated it, Natalie.